Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a picture. I don't know where it was. Maybe on your Instagram or whatnot. Like, did you just set up your studio to be like Dolby Atmos? Is that a
Yep,
thing?
yep. I'm 914 in this small room, which is crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, yeah, and it's
What's
fantastic.
four? What's four?
Four up top.
Ah,
Yeah, so
that's
I've got
cool.
front stereo and rear stereo. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so that's something I never really actually understood. So I mean, is that for uh, Apple Music in this case because they're using now?
Well, I mean, Atmos music is just doing music mixes in Atmos. So it's the same Dolby Atmos processing that they've had for film. And the core concept is that it's a virtualized playback environment. So you have a specific number of speakers wherever you're mixing it. And I believe to be Dolby certified, it has to be at least 914, but you could be 22, 6, 12, like whatever. You can be any configuration you want. But when you're mixing, you are placing things in a 3D space. And then during playback, the calculations are made to decide based on your speaker setup what should come out of what speakers and how loud it should be. So you're not tied into like 5.1 and quad were five speakers in a sub or four speakers, and that's it. And there was no other like way to listen to it. But this is a mix that goes around you and has some stuff above you, and then it plays back on however many speakers you've got. So Amazon and Tidal and Deezer and a few other platforms have been streaming Atmos music for a while, but Apple signing on has obviously, even though Spotify has way more subscribers, but Spotify does not support Atmos yet. Though I can't, it's just got to be a matter of time now because there's so much momentum behind it. So yeah, so it's the ability to have simultaneously this object-based mix that can translate itself onto any number of speakers during playback, including mono. It'll fold itself down to mono. But there is also the binaural component where if you're listening on headphones, all of a sudden now there is an extra spatialization layer that does psychoacoustic stuff to make you feel that room in your headphones.
Right. I mean, my tiny amount of experience doing anything that has to do with multi-channel stuff. Uh, what can I mean? Can you really make the music that much more cool? Like, wouldn't just be a guitar every now and then coming around you?
No, it's different. It's
I,
different. I mean, I think it's things like, well, first of all, obviously when you're listening back on speakers, having a center speaker and then also having the phantom center from the left right gives you so much more control over the low end and the vocal and things like that, because you can take like the snare drum and have it in the left right and not in the center speaker, and now those drivers aren't trying to reproduce the snare drum and the vocal, so it's a very different sound. So there's that, but it's just like being able to take the drum kit and spread it further out to the sides and push the cymbals up towards the ceiling. And now you really do get this 3D thing with the drums. And then you add a bit of ambience in the back. And now, without being silly and like, oh, everything has to fly over your head or whatever, but you really do just wrap the mix around you in the room. And even in headphones, if you're careful and you listen to the binaural as you're doing it, you can make that same sense of space happen, but without completely destroying the mix or making it distracting. Like, I think the mistake is to want to just fly things around because you can. But there's usually an element or two that's cool when it's flying around. But the kick, the bass, the vocal, like that stuff wants to be stationary and just sound big.
right. I mean, that does sound cool, but I mean, so as a mixing engineer like you, have there been a lot of work now, like remixing stuff to conform to this new like trendy thing?
Yeah, I mean, and whether it's trendy or not, who knows? I think the
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that it has a headphone component makes it much more sticky than 5.1, for instance, where if you
Right,
didn't
right.
have the speakers, you didn't have the speakers and you didn't care. But everybody with like what you're wearing in your ears right now can take advantage of all of the binaural stuff. So yeah, it's going to be pretty sticky, I think. And there are two components to it. One is people are still hiring me to mix in stereo. They're not saying like, hey, we want you to do the Atmos mixes, but then I offer that as part of mixing. Like, hey, look, for whatever the economics of it are, while we're doing the stereo, it's not nearly as much work for me to also do an Atmos as it would be if we started from scratch to do an Atmos. So that's the idea. It is a separate mix. You wouldn't make your stereo from the Atmos necessarily, though you could. It is a separate mix, but it's something that if you think about it properly, and it takes a lot of work to set up a mix template that can go between the two. I spent, I think, 3 solid days just tweaking my mix template so I could begin to do it. And I'm still tweaking it constantly as I do it. But yeah, it just becomes part of the mix process going from stereo to Atmos or the other way around. And back to your original point, working in headphones is a great way to do it, because as you start to build the Atmos version, you can start by listening to just the stereo and then start to spatialize it. And you know exactly where things might have gone wrong. Whereas if you're just on speakers, it always sounds good to have stuff coming out of more speakers in the room. Like it always will. But that won't necessarily translate to the binaural.